Samuel 4:4, it says, Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son who was lame in his feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel, and his nurse took him and fled. It happened as she made haste to flee that he fell and became lame. His name was Mephibosheth. Ashley, what would this have to do with a women's weekend? Right? So I just want to share what the Lord would speak to me about Mephibosheth. He was not born lame. He was unintentionally dropped. So at the time of Mephibosheth, when Saul and Jonathan were killed, and they knew that, the immediate response would be for them to kill off everyone else in the royal family. Because when he got older, even though he was young, hear me, even though he was young and not a threat, but when he got older, he was going to be a threat to the new king because he was the royal family of the previous king. So there could be some there could be some fighting. There can be some uprising if he wasn't killed. So with the best intention, the nurse grabbed him up and took off and dropped him. With the most pure intention. She was well-meaning. She was trusted by a king to nurse Mephibosheth. Ashley, this is real churchy. This is super, I never preach the Old Testament because it's just super churchy, right? So what does that mean for us? Has anybody ever been trusted? Has anybody ever trusted somebody and were dropped? Did some lady in this house get handed something? Maybe it is a baby. Maybe it was a ministry. Maybe it was a calling or a purpose, and you unintentionally, without hurting, didn't mean to hurt it, dropped it. You dropped it because it was heavy. You dropped it because you were hurrying. You dropped it because you panicked. Maybe it's only me in this house, but that's okay. You can join me and Jesus today. Because I have dropped some stuff. I've been given opportunity, or I've been given something, or I've failed a person or a relationship that I loved because I was in haste, because I moved quickly, because I operated in fear and anxiety, because the news was immediate danger for Mephibosheth. It was immediate danger. This nurse was unnamed. But she kept this. She kept him. So I want to talk for just a second. Just one minute I want to touch briefly on before we move on that something, if you've been handed something and you've dropped it, there's hope. We're not going to stop at this story and say there's not hope, like you didn't mean to and you failed and you dropped it and now it's hurt. The feet are broke right off the purpose of your life. It's never going to be what it was. So what do you do now, right? I'm so glad you asked. Because she picked him back up. Because had she left him there, the thing that was going to kill him, that she was trying to save him from, was actually King David, who was in covenant with Jonathan. He was in a covenant friendship with Jonathan, and he had no intention of killing Mephibosheth. Quite frankly, it was the opposite. He was put in a place where he was going to take care of him. He had given his word to his friend Jonathan, I'm going to take care of your boy. I'm not going to hurt it. I'm not going to hurt him. I'm not going to destroy him. And the way that it was before isn't going to be. But again, she moved in fear and panic, and it was never going to be the way that she thought it was going to be. Can any lady in here relate? Can any man in here relate? That still we operate and we move in fear, and then it's so unintentional what we drop when God's trying to give us strength to carry this thing through. And it was never his intention to take it away from you or make you feel like you weren't good enough or that you couldn't do it. Because beyond, if we can empower one person in this body, in this church, that gets with one person in another church that understands that they can turn around and pick up that thing that they've dropped, then we will have a community that is not this like saying we know God and not really knowing who he is and the goodness that he is. Because you can pick up whatever's been dropped. That's what Jesus does. He picks up whatever's been dropped, whatever's been broken, whatever's lame. That's the hope. That's the hope that we stand here. That's the reason why we sing. Because just because it looks broken and it looks out, turn around and pick that thing up. Have you ever made a mistake that caused harm to someone? Did you ever have good intentions, but you fell short with what you were trying to do? What happens when our best efforts, it was our best, and we still failed? Because that's the heart of the nurse. She had no intention on hurting Mephibosheth. But what happens is now, maybe just me, but I'd be like, well, it's broke. I got to step over this, and I guess I'll move on to something else because, idle time is the devil's playground. I've taken that to heart. There's no time for idle time. You've got stuff to do, So I get in that zone and I'm doing and moving and you're stepping over a broken thing, but I just believe that God's going to restore hope to the river. He's going to restore hope to the river that whatever you dropped and whatever you lost and whatever you've been through, I know you didn't mean to. I know it wasn't your intention to be ugly. I know it wasn't your intention to hurt them. I know it wasn't your intention to fail them. Whether you feel like you failed your kids, or maybe you feel like you failed your grandkids, or you feel like you failed your spouse. I know you didn't do it intentionally, but there is hope in this river. There is hope today that you don't have to leave that thing lame. A woman who acted heroically. She acted heroically, but tripped. Anybody ever tripped in their walk with Jesus? You didn't all the way fall away, and you didn't walk away from him. You just stumbled a little bit, had to catch yourself again, wait, here I am. I'm doing this thing. I'm not going to lose sight of what I'm doing. I'm not going to lose sight of the hope that he is. But we've tripped. And in that moment of tripping, the impact of her tumble forever changed the life of a young man that she was in charge of. She was in charge of. Even though Mephibosheth was young, he was at risk. That's what her heart felt like. Because when God births something in you, you're going to protect it. Y'all know, it even goes with kids. I'm kind of speaking to mamas, but you listen too, dads. But when my first baby, I was like a germ freak. You had to wear a blanket over you because she couldn't even touch your clothes. You were not worthy enough for her to touch your clothes. She would get a rash and break out, or she would I felt this some type of way, Mama Bear rose up inside of me, and I was like, hey, we were washing our hands, and we're being careful because when it was something so dear and when she was little, now, it got to the point where she was the clumsiest kid you ever knew. And by 5, she would knock her head off the wall and I'd be like, oh, she's okay. It switched real quick because when she's super small, when God gives you something super small, you know what I'm talking about. And you can see the first time mom's in Walmart, I see you. And I love you, and I have a heart for you because I was you. I get it. Now I'm don't lick the door. That's really gross. That's the level we're at now, because it just gets there, right? But the truth of the matter is that when something's handed to you so precious, I wonder if she would have been a little more careful in her haste had he not been 5. Because the longer this thing goes on, the thing is when God hands you something, nurse, and trusts you with it, mama, no matter what it is, whether it's a physical person or whether it's potential or purpose, God's been speaking to you. And he hands it to you at first when God gives you a vision for a new ministry or gives you a vision for something new. You're going all in, right? You're going to do it with all your heart, and there's no tripping, and you're going full-fledged steam engine, can't be moved. But as time goes on and it takes longer, our patience grows more thin, and then what happens is that's where the wobbling and the tripping happens. And we trip. Because as time goes on, the haste it seems more pressing than what we're carrying. And I just want you to know that what you're holding, even if it's little, is important. And I want what you're holding, even if you've held on to it for 30 years, it's important. He still handed it to you to carry that out. In the NLT, it says that she dropped him. Mephibosheth means from the mouth of shame. It's like he was destined to be broken. It was like he was destined to be dropped. But God saw fit to work it all out, because he's working all things for your good. But he saw fit to work it out for David to be king. And David in 2 Samuel 9, verse 1 says, "Now David said, 'Is there anyone who is left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?'" Isn't that just like Jesus? He's looking for you. He is truly looking for you. You may be in this room hiding in shame, or maybe you know somebody hiding in shame, but Jesus, just like King David, is looking for you. I think he very well knew that Mephibosheth was alive and well. But he wanted somebody to know, like, I'm looking for him. And he found him in Lodabar. And that means Nothingville. And he moves him to a place in the palace so he can take care of him. And had the nurse not turned around and picked him up, a lame 5-year-old with broken feet, she had to pick him up, and she couldn't take him to a hospital because she still was in fear for his life. Do you understand? She couldn't take him to a hospital because she still was in fear. And so she took care of him. If she wouldn't have turned around and picked that boy up, then he could have never moved into the palace where his purpose was, where his full potential was. So I know that maybe just like me, or maybe only me, you feel like you've dropped something, or you've let somebody down, or it was the most unintentional move that you meant it with your whole heart, and you still let them down. But I just believe in this room that if you can today turn around and pick that thing up, if you can pick that potential up, if you can pick that ministry up, that relationship up, that it will move that into a place in the kingdom where it's always intended to be, as if it never happened. Mephibosheth made it to the king's place. All she had to do was pick that thing up. They were singing, and I was like, God, I really struggled between two words. They were heavy on my heart. And I could not really get direction. I promise you. I said, okay, I'm going to follow the song service. Whatever she sings, that's what I'm going to say. Because you're going to have to give me clear direction. Because I don't want to miss you. I don't want to misrepresent you, God. My heart is super pure, but I also know that you can unintentionally drop things. And I didn't want that to be me. But she starts singing about the goodness of God. Do you understand what that means? That even when your feet are broke, even if you're the nurse and you drop this thing, even if you can't walk on your own, or the person that God trusted you with dropped you. His goodness And mercy will follow you all the days of your life. If your arms are broke, if your feet are broke, if you made every bad choice, it doesn't matter what you've done, what you've been through, where you're going. He's coming after you. He's coming after you. He's coming after you this morning. He's coming after you every day for the rest of your life, in your good choices and your bad choices. That's the goodness of God, and that's why we get so excited. That's why this is so exciting that, you know what, we can talk about being dropped. We can talk about the bad things, but if we can't misunderstand his goodness. It's not hinged on what's going on our lives. Circumstances don't hinge his goodness. His goodness knows no limits. It knows no boundaries. It goes on, and it's chasing after you this morning. And it doesn't matter if you can identify with the nurse or if you can identify with Mephibosheth. You can either be dropped or you're dropping everything. Just butterfingers. But I'll tell you that if you can understand his goodness, if you can understand that his passionate love is to pursue you all the days of your life, the powerful thing, the last verse I want to read in 2 Samuel 9:13, it's, so Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he ate continually at the king's table, and he was lame in both of his feet. Do you know that my pastor said that when you pull up at the table, and if we were all sitting at the table, you couldn't see my feet? Do you understand that? He brings you equal to this. If you just get to, you turn around and pick that thing up and make sure it gets to the King of glory, Jesus. And if you put that thing at Jesus' feet, everybody becomes equal. It doesn't matter if your feet are broke, and it doesn't matter if you have slippery hands. You become equal in the King. And you eat continually. You never stop feasting on his goodness. You get to eat everything that God has for you. And it doesn't matter that you have lame in your feet. With that note, Jamie, if you'll come. There's hope. There is hope of his goodness. Ashley, you don't know. I don't know. You're right. I don't know your story, but I do know mine. And if he can come after me, and I never just took off. I never went way, like I really never did, but I promise you, I sat in a pew in church, in a couple of churches, and I still, my heart, I unintentionally dropped a thing or two. I dropped a person or two. And I didn't mean to. But the hope of glory is when you turn around and pick that thing up. Maybe you didn't serve God like you serve him now when your kids were little and they're fighting you on it. And I don't know your story. Maybe you're just praying for that prodigal. You're praying for that one that's taken off. If I would have just done this better, if I would have just done that better. Listen, Mama, just pick it up. Just pick it up. Let them hear you pray now. Let them know that his goodness is real in your life now. It's not circumstantial. That's how this thing turns around, is all you have to do is say, God, I say yes. I dropped it. I didn't mean to. I'm going to pick this thing up. Or if you've been dropped, my heart goes out to you. You were trusted. You trusted that person. You trusted that parent. You trusted that relationship, and they dropped you. I mean, they dropped you hard. You don't know how you're here today. But all you have to do is let God and all of his goodness pick you back up and set you in a place where Jesus is. And that's where the table's equal. And you can feed on that forever and ever and ever. Yesterday, I'm telling you, the hunger in the ladies at the river is real. You know, you're pastoring them. They're hungry. They're craving. You guys are and his goodness and his promises that you get to eat and you'll never be full. He's just going to fill you with his joy, with his peace, overwhelming just gratitude, overwhelming just understanding and grace for the community and people. He's just going to keep filling you. And then when you think you can't take anymore, you're going to just keep eating continually and feasting on his goodness and the fruit of his spirit and what he's got for you. You just got to get to him. You're like, Ashley, I'm at church, 10 o'clock on a Sunday. I'm getting to him. I sit right there, full of self and full of fear, moving in haste and not wanting to do the wrong thing and doing all the wrong things. You can sit right in that comfy chair and do all the wrong things. Because if you don't grasp his goodness and you don't understand his pursuit and his passionate love for you, you'll miss what he's doing. Psalms 23:6, if everyone will stand. Is that what I'm trying to learn now? Give me the nod. Psalms 23:6, surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. I think this is the promise to Mephibosheth, and I think this is the promise to the river and the ladies and gentlemen of the river, that surely he's going to chase you when you don't want him to. He's going to find you when you're not even looking for him. He's coming after you with his goodness and his fullness and his mercy and his unfailing love. Everybody else might drop you, and you might drop everybody, but there's one that you will never ever be dropped by, and he will never drop you, because he will hold on to you with his unfailing love forever and ever and ever, that you will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That means that when you leave this place, you're going to take that sanctuary with you. It's going to be in your car, in your business, in your workplace, with your kids. That's what we're after. Now listen, I know there's a pandemic, so everybody doesn't have to come to the front. You do what you feel comfortable with in your heart, but I don't want to miss this opportunity, because I do believe that if any two people agree on one thing, that something changes in the atmosphere. So I'm inviting you, ladies and gentlemen, to come to the front, because God can do some stuff. You don't have to sit back, and you don't have to pretend like you've got it all together, because this is a safe house. I know your pastors, and this is a safe place. All you have to do is, if you want to pick that thing back up, I'm inviting you